I've sold another story, chickies, she said. The one about the king of the mussels. So, there'll be buns for tea. You can go and get them as soon as they're baked. About 11, isn't it? Peter, Phyllis, and Bobby exchanged glances with each other. 6 glances in all. Then Bobby said, Mother, would you mind if we didn't have the buns for tea tonight, but on the 15th? That's next Thursday. I don't mind when you have them, dear, said Mother. But why? Because it's Perks's birthday, said Bobby. He's 32, and he says he doesn't keep his birthday anymore because he's got other things to keep. Not rabbits or secrets, but the kids and the missus. You mean his wife and children, said Mother. Yes, said Phyllis. It's the same thing, isn't it? And we thought we'd make a nice birthday for him. He's been so awfully jolly decent to us, you know, Mother, said Peter, and we agreed that next Monday we'd ask you if we could. But supposing there hadn't been a Monday before the 15th, said Mother. Oh, then we meant to ask you to let us anticipate it and go without when the Monday came. Anticipate, said Mother. I see. Certainly, it would be nice to put his name on the buns with pink sugar, wouldn't it? Perks, said Peter. It's not a pretty name. His other name's Albert, said Phyllis. I asked him once. We might put A.P., said Mother. I'll show you how when the time comes. This was all very well as far as it went, but even 14 halfpenny buns with A.P. on them in pink sugar do not of themselves make a very grand celebration. There are always flowers, of course, said Bobby later, when a really earnest council was being held on the subject in the hayloft, where the broken chaff-cutting machine was, and the row of holes to drop hay through into the hay racks over the mangers of the stables below. He's got lots of flowers of his own, said Peter. But it's always nice to have them given you, said Bobby. However many you've got of your own, we can use flowers for trimmings to the birthday. But there must be something to trim besides buns. Let's all be quiet and think, said Phyllis. No one's to speak until it's thought of something. So they were all quiet, and so very still that a brown rat thought that there was no one in the loft, and came out very boldly. When Bobby sneezed, the rat was quite shocked and hurried away, for he saw that a hayloft where such things could happen was no place for a respectable, middle-aged rat that liked a quiet life. Hooray! Cried Peter suddenly. I've got edge now and begin. So they went. The old lady at the post office said she didn't see why Perks should have a birthday any more than anyone else. No, said Bobby. I should like everyone to have one. Only we know when his is. Mine's tomorrow, said the old lady, and much notice anyone will take of it. Go along with you. So they went, and some people were kind, and some were crusty, and some would give, and some would not. It is rather difficult work asking for things, even for other people, as you have no doubt found if you've ever tried it. When the children got home and counted up what had been given and what had been promised, they felt that for the first day it was not so bad. Peter wrote down the list of the things in the little pocketbook where he kept the numbers of his engines. These were the lists. Given: a tobacco pipe from the sweet shop, half a pound of tea from the grocer's, a woolen scarf, slightly faded, from the draper's, which was the other side of the grocer's, a stuffed squirrel from the doctor. Promised: a piece of meat from the butcher, 6 fresh eggs from the woman who lived in the old turnpike cottage, a piece of honeycomb and 6 bootlaces from the cobbler, and an iron shovel from the blacksmith's. Very early next morning, Bobby got up and woke Phyllis. This had been agreed on between them. They had not told Peter because they thought he would think it silly, but they told him afterwards when it had turned out all right. They cut a big bunch of roses and put it in a basket with the needlebook that Phyllis had made for Bobby on her birthday, and a very pretty blue necktie of Phyllis's. Then they wrote on a paper, "For Mrs. Ransom, with our best love, because it is her birthday." And they put the paper in the basket, and they took it to the post office, and went in and put it on the counter, and ran away before the old woman at the post office had time to get into her shop. When they got home, Peter had grown confidential over helping Mother to get the breakfast, and had told her their plans. "There's no harm in it," said Mother, "but it depends how you do it. I only hope he won't be offended and think it's charity. Poor people are very proud, you know." "It isn't because he's poor," said Phyllis. "It's because we're fond of him." "I'll find some things that Phyllis has outgrown," said Mother, "if you're quite sure you can give them to him without his being offended. I should like to do some little thing for him, because he's been so kind to you. I can't do much because we're poor ourselves." "What are you writing, Bobby?" "Nothing particular," said Bobby, who had suddenly begun to scribble. "I'm sure he'd like the things, Mother." The morning of the 15th was spent very happily in getting the buns, and watching Mother make A.P. on them with pink sugar. You know how it's done, of course. You beat up whites of eggs and mix powdered sugar with them, and put in a few drops of cochineal, and then you make a cone of clean white paper with a little hole at the pointed end, sugar ink. The buns looked beautiful with a P on every one, and when they were put in a cool oven to set the sugar, the children went up to the village to collect the honey and the shovel and the other promised things. The old lady at the post office was standing on her doorstep. The children said good morning politely as they passed. Here, stop a bit, she said. So they stopped. Those roses, said she. Did you like them? Said Phyllis. They were as fresh as fresh. I made the needlebook, but it was Bobby's present. She skipped joyously as she spoke. Here's your basket, said the post office woman. She went in and brought out the basket. It was full of fat, red gooseberries. I dare say Perks's children would like them, said she. You are an old dear, said Phyllis, throwing her arms around the old lady's fat waist. Perks will be pleased. He won't be half so pleased as I was with your needlebook, and the tie, and the pretty flowers, and all, said the old lady, patting Phyllis's shoulder. You're good little souls that you are. Look here, I've got a pram round the back in the wood lodge. It was got for Emmy's first, that didn't live but 6 months, and she never had but that one. I'd like Mrs. Perks to have it. It'd be a help to her with that great boy of hers. Will you take it along? Oh, said all the children together. When Mrs. Ransom had got out the perambulator and took off the careful papers that covered it and dusted it all over, she said, Well, there it is. I don't know but what I'd have given it to her before I'd thought of it, only I didn't quite know if she'd accept it from me. You tell her it was my Emmy's little one's pram. Oh, isn't it nice to think there's going to be a real live bee as suddenly as she had begun. There, don't you mind me. I'm all right, she said. Like it? Why, it's a birthday such as Perks never had, not even when he was a boy and stayed with his uncle, who was a corn chandler, on his own account. He failed afterwards. Like it? Oh. And then she went on and said all sorts of things that I won't write down, because I'm sure that Peter and Bobby and Phyllis would not like me too. Their ears got hotter and hotter, and their faces redder and redder at the kind things Mrs. Perks said. They felt they had done nothing to deserve all this praise. At last, Peter said, "Look here, we're glad you're pleased, but if you go on saying things like that, we must go home, and we did want to stay and see if Mr. Perks is pleased too, but we can't stand this." "I won't say another single word," said Mrs. Perks with a beaming face, "but that needn't stop me thinking, need it? For if ever—" "Can we have a plate for the buns?" Bobby asked abruptly, and then Mrs. Perks hastily laid the table for tea, and the buns and the honey and the gooseberries were displayed on plates, and the roses were put into glass jam jars, and the tea table looked, as Mrs. Perks said, fit for a prince. "To think," she said, "me getting the place tidy early, and the little uns getting the wildflowers and all. Whenever did I think there'd be anything more for him, except the ounce of his pet particular that I got o' Saturday, and been saving up for him ever since. Bless us, he is early." Perks had indeed unlatched the latch of the little front gate. "Oh," whispered Bobby, "let's hide in the back kitchen, and you tell him about it. But give him the tobacco first, because you got it for him. And when you've told him, we'll all come in and shout many happy returns." It was a very nice plan, but it did not quite come off. To begin with, there was only just time for Peter and Bobby and Phyllis to rush into the wash-house, pushing the young and open-mouthed Perks children in front of them. There was no time to shut the door, so that, without at all meaning it, they had to listen to what went on in the kitchen. The wash-house was a tight fit for the Perks children and the Three Chimneys children, as well as all the wash-house's proper furniture, including the mangle and the copper. "Hello, old woman," they heard Mr. Perks's voice say. "Here's a pretty set out." "It's your birthday tea, Bert," said Mrs. Perks, "and here's an ounce of your extra particular. I got it o' Saturday, along o' your happening to remember it was your birthday today." "Good old girl," said Mr. Perks, and there was a sound of a kiss. "But what's that ram doing here? And what's all these bundles? And where did you get the sweet stuff? And—" The children did not hear what Mrs. Perks replied, because just then Bobby gave a start, put her hand in her pocket, and all her body grew stiff with horror. "Oh," she whispered to the others, "whatever shall we do? I forgot to put the labels on any of the things. He won't know what's from who. He'll think it's all us, and that we're trying to be grand, or charitable, or something horrid." "Hush," said Peter. And then they heard the voice of Mr. Perks, loud and rather angry. "I don't care," he said. "I won't stand it, and so I tell you straight. But, said Mrs. Perks, it's them children you make such a fuss about. The children from the 3 chimneys. I don't care, said Perks firmly. Not if it was an angel from heaven. We've got on all right all these years, and no favours asked. I'm not going to begin these sort of charity goings-on at my time of life, so don't you think it now. Oh, hush, said poor Mrs. Perks. Bert, shut your silly tongue, for goodness sake. The all 3 of 'em's in the wash-house, a-listening to every word you speaks. Then I'll give them something to listen to, said the angry Perks. I've spoke my mind to them afore now, and I'll do it again, he added, and he took 2 strides to the wash-house door and flung it wide open, as wide, that is, as it would go, with the tightly packed children behind it. Come out, said Perks. Come out and tell me what you mean by it. Have I ever complained to you of being short as you comes this charity lay over me? Oh, said Phyllis, I thought you'd be so pleased. I'll never try to be kind to anyone else as long as I live. No, I won't. Not never. She burst into tears. We didn't mean any harm, said Peter. It ain't what you means so much as what you does, said Perks. Oh, don't, cried Bobby, trying hard to be braver than Phyllis, and to find more words than Peter had done for explaining it. We thought you'd love it. We always have things on our birthdays. Oh, yes, said Perks. Your own relations. That's different. Oh, no, Bobby answered. Not our own relations. All the servants always gave us things at home, and us to them when it was their birthdays. And when it was mine, and Mother gave me the brooch, like a buttercup, Mrs. Vinny gave me 2 lovely glass pots, and nobody thought she was coming the charity lay over us. If it had been glass pots here, said Perks, I wouldn't have said so much. It's there being all this heaps and heaps of things I can't stand. No, nor won't neither. But they're not all from us, said Peter, only we forgot to put the labels on. They're from all sorts of people in the village. Who put 'em up to it, I'd like to know, asked Perks. Why, we did, said Phyllis. Perks sat down heavily in the elbow chair and looked at them with what Bobby afterwards described as withering glances of gloomy despair. So, you've been round telling the neighbours we can't make both ends meet. Well, now you've disgraced us as deep as you can in the neighbourhood. You can just take the whole bag of tricks back where it came from. Very much obliged, I'm sure. I don't doubt but what you meant is kind, but I'd rather not be acquainted with you any longer if it's all the same to you. He deliberately turned the chair round so that his back was turned to the children. The legs of the chair grated on the brick floor, and that was the only sound that broke the silence. Then, suddenly, Bobby spoke. Look here, she said. This is most awful. That's what I says, said Perks, not turning round. Look here, said Bobby desperately. We'll go if you like, and you needn't be friends with us any more if you don't want. But we secrets about the Russians. Do let Bobby tell you about the labels. Well, go ahead, said Perks grudgingly. Well then, said Bobby, fumbling miserably, yet not without hope, in her tightly stuffed pocket. We wrote down all the things everybody said when they gave us the things, with the people's names, because Mother said we ought to be careful, because what I wrote down, what she said, and you'll see. But Bobby could not read the labels just at once. She had to swallow once or twice before she could begin. Mrs. Perks had been crying steadily ever since her husband had opened the wash-house door. Now she caught her breath, choked, and said, "Don't you upset yourself, Missy. I know you meant it kind if he doesn't." "May I read the labels?" said Bobby, crying onto the slips as she tried to sort them. "Mother's first. It says, 'Little clothes for Mrs. Perks' children.' Mother said, 'I'll find some of Phyllis's things that she's grown out of if you're quite sure Mr. Perks wouldn't be offended and think it's meant for charity. I'd like to do some little thing for him because he's so kind to you. I can't do much because we're poor ourselves.'" Bobby paused. "That's all right," said Perks. "Your ma's a born lady. We'll keep the little frocks and whatnot now." "Then there's the perambulator and the gooseberries and the sweets," said Bobby. "They're from Mrs. Ransom. She said, I dare say Mr. Perks's children would like the sweets, and the perambulator was got for my Emmy's first. It didn't live but 6 months, and she's never had but that one. I'd like Mrs. Perks to have it. It would be a help with her fine boy. I'd have given it before if I'd been sure she'd accept of it from me. She told me to tell you," Bobby added, "that it was her Emmy's little one's pram." "I can't send Pram back, Bert," said Mrs. Perks firmly, "and I won't, so don't you ask me." "I'm not asking anything," said Perks gruffly. "Then the shovel," said Bobby. "Mr. James made it for you himself, and he said, where is it? Oh yes, here. He said, 'You tell Mr. Perks it's a pleasure to make a little trifle for a man as is so much respected.' And then he said he wished he could shoot your children and his own children like they do the horses, because, well, he knew what shoe leather was." "James is a good enough chap," said Perks. "Then the honey," said Bobby, in haste, "and the bootlaces. He said he respected a man that paid his way, and the butcher said the same, and the old turnpike woman said many was the time you'd lend her a hand with her garden when you were a lad, and things like that came home to roost. I don't know what she meant. And everybody who gave anything said they liked you, and it was a very good idea of ours, and nobody said anything said Perks. I don't know, he added, suddenly wheeling the chair round and showing a very odd-looking, screwed-up face. I don't know as ever I was better pleased. Not so much with the presents, though they're an A1 collection, but the kind respect of our neighbours. That's worth having, eh, Nell? I think it's all worth having, said Mrs. Perks, and you've made a most ridiculous fuss about nothing, Bert, if you ask me. No, I ain't, said Perks firmly. If a man didn't respect hisself, no one would do it for him. But everyone respects you, said Bobby. They all said so. I knew you'd like it when you really understood, said Phyllis brightly. Humph, you'll stay to tea, said Mr. Perks. Later on, Peter proposed Mr. Perks's health, and Mr. Perks proposed a toast, also honoured in tea, and the toast was, May the garland of friendship be ever green, which was much more poetical than anyone had expected from him. Jolly good little kids, those, said Mr. Perks to his wife as they went to bed. Oh, they're all right, bless their hearts, said his wife. It's you that's the aggravatingest old thing that ever was. I was ashamed of you, I tell you. You needn't to be, old gal. I climbed down handsome soon as I understood it wasn't charity. But charity's what I never did abide, and won't neither. All sorts of people were made happy by that birthday party. Mr. Perks and Mrs. Perks and the little Perkses, by all the nice things and by the kind thoughts of their neighbours. The Three Chimneys children, by the success, undoubted though unexpectedly delayed, of their plan. And Mrs. Ransom, every time she saw the fat Perks baby in the perambulator. Mrs. Perks made quite a round of visits to thank people for their kind birthday presents, and after each visit felt that she had a better friend than she had thought. Yes, said Perks reflectively. It's not so much what she does as what you means. That's what I say. Now, if it had been charity. Oh, drat charity, said Mrs. Perks. Nobody won't offer you charity, Bert, however much you was to want it, I lay. That was just friendliness, that was. When the clergyman called on Mrs. Perks, she told him all about it. It was friendliness, wasn't it, sir? Said she. I think, said the clergyman, it was what is sometimes called loving kindness. So you see, it was all right in the end. But if one does that sort of thing, one has to be careful to do it in the right way. For, as Mr. Perks said, when he had time to think it over, it's not so much what you do as what you mean. Chapter 10. The Terrible Secret. When they first went to live at Three Chimneys, the children had talked a great deal about their father, and had asked a great many questions about him, and what he was doing, and where he was, and when he would come home. Mother always answered their questions as well as she could. But as the time went on, they grew to speak less of him. Bobby had felt almost from the first that, for some strange, miserable reason, these questions hurt Mother and made her sad. And little by little, the others came to have this feeling too, though beautiful stretch of meadow and moorland, the far violet of the hills, and the unchanging changefulness of cloud and sky. Here's your tea, mother love, said Bobby. Do drink it while it's hot. Mother laid down her pen among the pages that were scattered all over the table, pages covered with her writing, which was almost as plain as print, and much prettier. She ran her hands into her hair, as if she were going to pull it out by handfuls. Poor dear head, said Bobby. Does it ache? No. Yes, not much, said Mother. Bobby, do you think Peter and Phil are forgetting Father? No, said Bobby indignantly. Why? You, none of you, ever speak of him now. Bobby stood first on one leg and then on the other. We often talk about him when we're by ourselves, she said. But not to me, said Mother. Why? Bobby did not find it easy to say why. You, she said, and stopped. She went over to the window and looked out. Bobby, come here, said her mother, and Bobby came. Now, said Mother, putting her arm round Bobby and laying her ruffled head against Bobby's shoulder. Try to tell me, dear. Bobby fidgeted. Tell Mother. Well then, said Bobby, I thought you were so unhappy about Daddy not being here. It made you worse when I talked about him. So I stopped doing it. And the others? I don't know about the others, said Bobby. I never said anything about that to them. But I expect they felt the same about it as me. Bobby dear, said Mother, still leaning her head against her. I'll tell you. Besides parting from Father, he and I have had a great sorrow. Oh, terrible. Worse than anything you can think of. And at first, it did hurt to hear you all talking of him as if everything were just the same. But it would be much more terrible if you were to forget him. That would be worse than anything. The trouble, said Bobby, in a very little voice. I promised I would never ask you any questions, and I never have I? But the trouble, it won't last always. No, said Mother. The worst will be over when Father comes home to us. I wish I could comfort you, said Bobby. Oh, my dear, do you suppose you don't? What would I do without you? You and the others? Do you think I haven't noticed how good you've all been? Not quarrelling nearly as much as you used to, and all the little kind things you do for me. The flowers, and cleaning my shoes, and tearing up to make my bed before I get time to do it myself. Bobby had sometimes wondered whether Mother noticed these things. That's nothing, she said. To what? I must get on with my work, said Mother, giving Bobby one last squeeze. Don't say anything to the others. That evening, in the hour before bedtime, instead of reading to the children, Mother told them stories of the games she and Father used to have when they were children and lived near each other in the country. Tales of the adventures of Father with Mother's brothers when they boys together. Very funny stories they were, and the children laughed as they listened. Uncle Edward died before he was grown up, didn't he? Said Phyllis, as Mother lighted the bedroom candles. Yes, dear, said Mother. You would have loved him. He was such a brave boy, and so adventurous, always in mischief, and yet friends with everybody in spite of it. And your Uncle Reggie's in Ceylon. Yes, and Father's away too. But I think they'd all like to think we'd enjoyed talking about the things they used to do. Don't you think so? Not Uncle Edward, said Phyllis in a shocked tone. He's in heaven. You don't suppose he's forgotten us and all the old times because God has taken him any more than I forget him? Oh no, he remembers. He's only away for a little time. We shall see him some day. And Uncle Reggie, and Father too, said Peter. Yes, said Mother. Uncle Reggie and Father too. Good night, my darlings. Good night, said everyone. Bobby hugged her mother more closely even than usual, and whispered in her ear, "Oh, I do love you so, Mammy. I do, I do." When Bobby came to think it all over, she tried not to wonder what the great trouble was, but she could not always help it. Father was not dead, like poor Uncle Edward. Mother had said so. And he was not ill, or Mother would have been with him. Being poor wasn't the trouble. Bobby knew it was something nearer the heart than money could be. I mustn't try to think what it is, she told herself. No, I mustn't. I am glad Mother noticed about us not quarrelling so much. We'll keep that up. And alas, that very afternoon she and Peter had what Peter called a first-class shindy. They had not been a week at Three Chimneys before they had asked Mother to let them have a piece of garden each for their very own, and she had agreed, and the south border, under the peach trees, had been divided into 3 pieces, and they were allowed to plant whatever they liked there. Phyllis had planted mignonette and nasturtium and Virginia stock in hers. The seeds came up, and though they looked like weeds, Phyllis believed that they would bear flowers some day. The Virginia stock justified her faith quite soon, and her garden was gay with a band of bright little flowers, pink and white and red and mauve. I can't weed for fear I put up the wrong things, she used to say comfortably. It saves such a lot of work. Peter sowed vegetable seeds in his, carrots and onions and turnips. The seed was given to him by the farmer who lived in the nice black and white wood and plaster house just beyond the bridge. He kept turkeys and guinea fowls and was a most amiable man. But Peter's vegetables never had much of a chance because he liked to use the earth of his garden for digging canals and making forts and earthworks for his toy soldiers. And the seeds of vegetables rarely come to much in a soil that is constantly disturbed for the purpose of water and irrigation. Bobby planted rose bushes in her garden, but all the little new leaves of the rose bushes shriveled and withered, perhaps because she moved them from the other part of the garden in May, which is not at all the right time of the year for moving roses. But she would not own that they were dead, and hoped on against hope until the day when Perks came up to see the garden and told her quite plainly that all her roses were dead as doornails. "Only good for bonfires, miss," he said. "You just dig 'em up and burn 'em, and I'll give you some nice fresh roots out of my gardens. Pansies and stocks and sweet willies and forget-me-nots. I'll bring 'em along tomorrow if you get the ground ready." So the next day she set to work, and that happened to be the day when Mother had praised her and the others about not quarrelling. She moved the rose bushes and carried them to the other end of the garden, where the rubbish heap was that they meant to make a bonfire of when Guy Fawkes Day came. Meanwhile, Peter had decided to flatten out all his forts and earthworks with a view to making a model of the railway tunnel, cutting, embankment, canal, aqueduct, bridges, and all. So, when Bobby came back from her last thorny journey with the dead rose bushes, he had got the rake and was using it busily. "I was using the rake," said Bobby. "Well, I'm using it now," said Peter. "But I had it first," said Bobby. "Then it's my turn now," said Peter, and that was how the quarrel began. "You're always being disagreeable about nothing," said Peter, after some heated argument. "I had the rake first," said Bobby, flushed and defiant, holding on to its handle. "Didn't I tell you this morning I meant to have it? Didn't I, Phil?" Phil said she didn't want to be mixed up in their rows, and instantly, of course, she was. "If you remember, you ought to say." Of course she doesn't remember, but she might say so. "I wish I'd had a brother instead of two whiny little kitty sisters," said Peter. This was always recognised as indicating the high watermark of Peter's rage. Bobby made the reply she always made to it. "I can't think why little boys were ever invented." And just as she said it, she looked up and saw the 3 long windows of Mother's workshop flashing in the red rays of the sun. The sight brought back those words of praise. "You don't quarrel like you used to." "Oh," cried Bobby, just as if she had been hit, or had caught her finger in the door, or had felt the hideous sharp beginning of toothache. "What's the matter?" said Phyllis. Bobby wanted to say, "Don't let's quarrel. Mother hates it so." But though she tried hard, she couldn't. Peter was looking too disagreeable and insulting. "Take the horrid rake then," was the best she could manage. she was in the garden, kneeling by the side of Peter, who never for an instant ceased to squeal. "What happened, Bobby?" Mother asked. "It was the rake," said Phyllis. "Peter was pulling at it, so was Bobby, and she let go, and he went over." "Stop that noise, Peter," said Mother. "Come, stop at once." Peter used up what breath he had left in a last squeal and stopped. "Now," said Mother, "are you hurt?" "If he was really hurt, he wouldn't make such a fuss," said Bobby, still trembling with fury. "He's not a coward." "I think my foot's broken off, that's all," said Peter huffily, and sat up. Then he turned quite white. Mother put her arm round him. "He is hurt," she said. "He's fainted. Here, Bobby, sit down and take his head on your lap." Then Mother undid Peter's boots. As she took the right one off, something dripped from his foot onto the ground. It was red blood, and when the stocking came off, there were 3 red wounds in Peter's foot and ankle, where the teeth of the rake had bitten him, and his foot was covered with red smears. "Run for water, a basinful," said Mother, and Phyllis ran. She upset most of the water out of the basin in her haste, and had to fetch more in a jug. Peter did not open his eyes again until Mother had tied her handkerchief round his foot, and she and Bobby had carried him in and laid him on the brown wooden settle in the dining room. By this time, Phyllis was halfway to the doctor's. Mother sat by Peter and bathed his foot and talked to him, and Bobby went out and got tea ready and put on the kettle. "It's all I can do," she told herself. "Oh, suppose Peter should die, or be a helpless cripple for life, or have to walk with crutches, or wear a boot with a sole like a log of wood." She stood by the back door, reflecting on these gloomy possibilities, her eyes fixed on the water butt. "I wish I'd never been born," she said, and she said it out loud. "Why, log a mercy, what's that for?" asked a voice, and Perks stood before her with a wooden drug basket full of green-leaved things and soft, loose earth. "Oh, it's you," she said. Peter hurt his foot with a rake. 3 great gaping wounds, like soldiers get, and it was partly my fault. "That it wasn't, I'll go bail," said Perks. "Doctor seen him." "Phyllis has gone for the doctor." "He'll be all right, you see if he isn't," said Perks. "Why, my father's second cousin had a hay fork run into him, right into his inside, and he was right as ever in a few weeks, all except his being a bit weak in the head afterwards, and they did say that it was along of his getting a touch of the sun in the hayfield, and not the fork at all. I remember him well, a kind-hearted chap, but soft, as you might say." Bobby tried to let herself be cheered by this heartening reminiscence. "Well," said Perks, "you won't want to be bothered with gardening just this minute, I dare say. You show me where your garden is, and I'll pop the bits of stuff in for you, and I'll hang about, if I may make so free, to see the doctor as he comes out and hear what he says. You cheer up, missy. I lay a pound he ain't hurt, not to speak of." But he was. The doctor came and looked at the foot and bandaged it beautifully, and said that Peter must not put it on the ground for at least Yes, I shan't, silly, said Peter, very much relieved, all the same. Oh, Peter, I am so sorry, said Bobby, after a pause. That's all right, said Peter, gruffly. It was all my fault, said Bobby. Rot, said Peter. If we hadn't quarrelled, it wouldn't have happened. I knew it was wrong to quarrel. I wanted to say so, but somehow I couldn't. Don't drivel, said Peter. I shouldn't have stopped if you had said it. Not likely. And besides, us rowing hadn't anything to do with it. I might have got my foot in the hoe, or taken off my fingers in the chaff-cutting machine, or blown my nose off with fireworks. It would have been hurt just the same, whether we'd been rowing or not. But I knew it was wrong to quarrel, said Bobby, in tears. And now you're hurt, and... Now, look here, said Peter firmly. You just dry up. If you're not careful, you'll turn into a beastly little Sunday school prig, so I tell you. I don't mean to be a prig, but it's so hard not to be when you're really trying to be good. The gentle reader may perhaps have suffered from this difficulty. Not it, said Peter. It's a jolly good thing it wasn't you was hurt. I'm glad it was me. There, if it had been you, you'd have been lying on the sofa, looking like a suffering angel, and being the light of the anxious household, and all that, and I couldn't have stood it. No, I shouldn't, said Bobby. Yes, you would, said Peter. I tell you, I shouldn't. I tell you, you would. Oh, children, said Mother's voice at the door. Quarrelling again. Already. We aren't quarrelling. Not really, said Peter. I wish you wouldn't think it's rows every time we don't agree. When Mother had gone out again, Bobby broke out. Peter, I am sorry you're hurt, but you are a beast to say I'm a prig. Well, said Peter unexpectedly, perhaps I am. You did say I wasn't a coward, even when you're in such a wax. The only thing is, don't you be a prig, that's all. You keep your eyes open, and if you feel priggishness coming on, just stop in time. See? Yes, said Bobby. I see. Then let's call it Pax, said Peter magnanimously. Bury the hatchet in the fathoms of the past. Shake hands on it. I say, Bobby, old chap, I am tired. He was tired for many days after that, and the settle seemed hard and uncomfortable, in spite of all the pillows and bolsters and soft folded rugs. It was terrible not to be able to go out. They moved the settle to the window, and from there Peter could see the smoke of the trains winding along the valley, but he could not see the trains. At first, Bobby found it quite hard to be as nice to him as she wanted to be, for fear he should think her priggish. But that soon wore off, and both she and Phyllis were, as he observed, jolly good sorts. Mother sat with him when the sisters were out, and the words, "He's not a coward," made Peter determined not to make any fuss about the pain in his foot, though it was rather bad, especially at night. Praise helps people very much sometimes. There were visitors, too. Mrs. Burks came up to ask how he was, and so did the station master, and several of the village people. But the time went slowly. I do wish there was something to read, said Peter. I've read all our books, two ways. Bobby found Perks busy cleaning lamps. "And how's that young gent?" said he. "Better, thanks," said Bobby, "but he's most frightfully bored. I came to ask if you'd got any magazines you could lend him." "There now," said Perks regretfully, rubbing his ear with a black and oily lump of cotton waste. "Why didn't I think of that now? I was trying to think of something as I'd amuse him only this morning, and I couldn't think of anything better than a guinea pig. And a young chap I know's going to fetch that over for him this tea time." "How lovely! A real live guinea pig. He will be pleased. But he'd like the magazines as well." "That's just it," said Perks. "I've just sent the pick of 'em to Snickson's boy, him what's just getting over the pneumonia. But I've lots of illustrated papers left." He turned to the pile of papers in the corner and took up a heap 6 inches thick. "There," he said, "I'll just slip a bit of string and a bit of paper round 'em." He pulled an old newspaper from the pile and spread it on the table and made a neat parcel of it. "There," said he, "there's a lot of pictures, and if he likes to mess 'em about with his paint box or coloured chalks or what not, why let him. I don't want 'em." "You're a dear," said Bobby, took the parcel and started. The papers were heavy, and when she had to wait at the level crossing while a train went by, she rested the parcel on the top of the gate, and idly she looked at the printing on the paper that the parcel was wrapped in. Suddenly she clutched the parcel tighter and bent her head over it. It seemed like some horrible dream. She read on. The bottom of the column was torn off. She could read no farther. She never remembered how she got home, but she went on tiptoe to her room and locked the door. Then she undid the parcel and read that printed column again, sitting on the edge of her bed, her hands and feet icy cold and her face burning. When she had read all there was and drew a long, uneven breath. "So, now I know," she said. When she had read what she had read was headed, "End of the trial, verdict, sentence." The name of the man who had been tried was the name of her father. The verdict was guilty, and the sentence was 5 years penal servitude. "Oh, Daddy," she whispered, crushing the paper hard. "It's not true. I don't believe it. You never did it. Never, never."